Welcome to Conversations with a Dog Trainer. This is a separate section of my YouTube channel, and this is really designed for me to talk to dog owners about aspects of dog behavior, dog ownership, how a dog's mind works that will help you better understand your dog. So, one of the topics that is so misunderstood is socialization. Now, the other day, I had a client come into the kennel and she brought me two dogs for training, two little dogs, really nice dogs. And one thing she mentioned is that the dogs get very excited, and they're very social dogs. They get very excited when they meet people and how it's problematic. And we have to be careful when we're addressing problems with behavior. We can't double talk. It can't be okay and not okay. It can't be desirable and not desirable. We have to decide if it works for us or not because we have to decide what actions to take. So she proceeds to tell me that when the dogs are in the backyard, they bark nonstop. And when we're out on a walk, they get very excited when they meet people, overly so. And then proceeds to tell me how her backyard butts up against an alley, a lane. So people walk by and the dogs get excited, and then people come up to the fence. It's not a privacy fence, so you can see right through. And they talk to the dogs and they pet the dogs and so on and so forth. Here's the kicker. She says, but it's okay because they're supposed to socialize, right? It's socialization. No, that's not socialization. That is the bizarro version of socialization. It is training the dogs to be hectic in the presence of other people. It is training the dogs to have an expectation that interactions between us, the dogs, and you, the humans, is by nature explosive. And that's a dangerous mindset for a dog to have. And it makes a lot of complication and strife for both dogs and human, the owner of the dogs, not the people walking by. They're cute little things and they have their fun with the dogs for a minute or two, puts a smile on their face. It's a feel-good moment and they move on with their day. These people doing this, I'm certain, don't have any bad intent. They're not doing it to mess with the dogs or mess with the owner. They're just enjoying the dogs. But it creates this buildup and expectation in the dog's mind that interaction is explosive and that is dangerous. So socialization should not look like that. Socialization should be like my family and I today. We're out at a street fair and there's musicians playing and crowds everywhere and food being sold, food vendors everywhere, and just people all over. And we're all coexisting. And if we see that we're in a tight space, we move out of the way to accommodate one another. We get along in society. We exchange a smile, even with a stranger. Friendly, why not? It's nice. Socialization. I didn't walk around and touch everybody. I didn't run up to a stranger and go, oh my God, I'm so excited to see you. And then the person go, well, who the hell are you exactly? But we do this with our dogs and we expect our dogs to do that. And then we complain about how excited they get and all the problematic behavior that trails after that excitement. So again, we can't have it and not have it. It can't exist but not exist. If you want to get a really good example of a socialized dog, take a look at an urban setting at a homeless person and their dog. Look at someone who is living in the streets in downtown, in the core of the city. And the dog just chills. Forget about there's just a person walking by, a few people walking by. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people walking by. And the dog is chilled out, lying down on the sidewalk right next to its person, oblivious to everything going on around it. Do you want to know why it works that way? What do most people do when they're passing a homeless person on the sidewalk? You walk right by, pretend they're not there. Just go on about your day. Whether you notice them, didn't notice them, the point is you sailed on by. Where is that dog's expectation? This is nothing. It's background noise. It's like having a neighbor whose car alarm goes off, and the first time it goes off, you notice it. And then after a while, well, it's just there, and you learn to tune it out. I used to live across from a train. And at first, when we moved there, it was jarring You'd be watching TV and then you'd be distracted by the train. You'd be having a conversation, you'd be getting ready for bed. Boom, there goes the train. After a while, people would be over and they're like, how do you do this? Do what? The train. I'm like, I don't even hear it. It just becomes background noise. So the dogs that live in the streets don't hyperfixate because they haven't been trained to hyperfixate. You see, we mistake training for something we think we're doing with the dog, where training is occurring all the time. Training is simply the conditioning of habits. So if people walk by the fence and excite the dogs, then they're being trained to be excited. And that's a tough one because what do? How do you stop the outside world from doing what they're going to do? You don't necessarily have the want or the ability to be there policing people 24/7. In the case of someone living in the streets with their dog, it's kind of a no-brainer that most people are going to move on by, even if they're going to drop some change in the person's box or cup or offer them a meal or what have you. The interaction is minimal, and you're probably not going to pet the dog. So the dog says, well, it's me and my person. This is my universe exists right here. It's not out there. We train our dogs to believe that it exists out there. My dog is hardwired social, meaning it's innate. So when he was 10 weeks old, we went to an outlet mall near here. At the end of the day, it was closing time. And I could see he was frustrated. I knew my puppy from 7 weeks old. I went to go visit him at the breeder, went back a week later at 8 weeks, got him, came home. I already knew what I was getting. Very social dog. So we're at the outlet mall, and his little brain is frustrated because, well, where'd everybody go? Now we're walking by the Gap, and he sees mannequins in the window, and he fixates on the mannequins, and he starts to wiggle his little bulldog ass at the mannequins. He's hardwired social. So when I'm out with my dog, especially as a young puppy, if you're coming over to say hi and I think your energy is too big, then I'm not giving you access to my dog. No, my dog doesn't like people. No, my dog is scared. Oh, he's in training. He's got diarrhea. He's got Ebola. Like, just stay away from my dog. Because he already believes it's a big deal, and I don't need the outside world training him and reinforcing that belief. So when someone says people come to the fence or they ring my doorbell or visitors in my home or whatever, they make my dog nuts. Separate of the fact that the dog is enjoying it, please don't call that socialization. That is ugly, dirty, gross socialization because it's going to cause behavioral problems. One other quick story that illustrates this that just came to mind. Now I'm going back 25, maybe 30 years. I had a client with a golden retriever who was your very typical golden. I'd show up every week for a lesson. Dog would be pleased to see me. And week by week, she'd be patting him, hyping him up. Oh my gosh, Samson, we're going to have so much fun. Look who's here. Look who's here. It's Nick. And I would say to her over and over, please don't do that to your dog. And she'd say, why? He's happy to see you. And I would say, exactly. He's already happy. We don't need more happiness. Eventually, I get a call from her 6 months, maybe a year after we're done training. He pees every time someone comes into the house. What do I do about this? I said, look in the mirror and punch the person in the mirror. Like, what do we do about it now? You created this. So now I'll help you dig yourself out of this hole, but this is what I was warning you about. So if your dog is social, we don't need to hype up the social. We just need to continue exposing the dog and going more for neutral. And a lot of times too, with the opposite, if you have a fearful dog, some fearful dogs can be brought around to be social, but a lot of them, if they're really, truly uncomfortable, depending on their genetics, depending on their history, some dogs are not going to truly be social in the sense that they are not necessarily going to want interaction and contact. And so teaching them that we can be neutral, and equally important, that the outside world can be neutral. How many times I'm in a consultation with someone where they have a dog who has bitten multiple bites, and they're talking to me about a dog that hides from the public. But the public, again, coming from a nice place, I love dogs. So the person, the owner of the dog says, no, no, please, my dog is scared, my dog is shy, my dog is nervous. And the other person who wants to interact says, it's okay, it's okay. I love dogs. I had a dog just like that, and they want to go in. And then what they're teaching the dog is, you're right not to trust us because your polite version of how you'd like this story to go, your avoidance is what we call it, isn't going to work. So then the dog feels forced to bite. And I deal with that on a daily basis with people.
Under my chair, and my friend was like trying to get, I'm like, she, you know, those big adder on that chair?
Yeah, of course.
She hid under it,
Yeah.
and she's trying to get, and I said, don't, and she got me.
So neutral is really, really wonderful, and it's what we should strive for with our dogs. And then in moments where socialization is safe, and by safe, I don't just mean physically safe, I mean where it doesn't do any emotional or behavioral harm, then by all means, let's enjoy it. That's part of the joy of having a dog and being around animals. But do no harm, number one. Lastly, I just want to point out that this lady in question has 2 dogs. So she's got a tougher time now dealing with obedience. And how you socialize absolutely impacts your obedience training. What do you think the mindset of a dog is when you go out into the world? If the dog is so explosive and so anticipatory that every human they come across on a sidewalk, in a park, when you're out and about, is going to be a 10 on 10 explosion. Do you think it's going to be easy to get focus from your dog? Do you think it's going to be easy to get the dog to walk at a perfect heel right next to you when the sidewalk is littered with people and other dogs and smells and maybe some food, maybe some other stuff? You're going to be struggling to keep focus. If the dog is neutral, it's much easier to get focus. And then when we release our dog, the dog can now interact. Same thing in terms of your value, especially if you've got multiple dogs. Every time you add dogs, your value diminishes because you are now not the sole companion. You are not the sole creator and bringer of love and affection and fun and everything else to the dog. So what happens is you devalue yourself by bringing another dog into the presence in your home. So in this case, the lady bought 2 puppies against my recommendation, 2 litter mates. They are literally one dog. They are one brain attached together. So you've got to be careful with that because now you have 2 dogs that are hyperfixated on each other. And then when they explode towards people, they explode even harder than just an individual dog because they're feeding off each other's energy. And there might even be a competitive element too. Me first, she got more, I want this. So what do you think happens to your obedience? So there's such a trickle down effect. I could make this video an hour long with examples and explaining all the details and get really, really granular and detailed with the trickle down effect. But at the end of the day, if you misunderstand socialization, you're very likely going to find yourself in a hole that you'll be working a long time to dig out of. So I thought I would mention this today because after she left the kennel the other day after dropping off her dogs, it was just like flashing, like an emergency light, like an SOS, just a beep, beep, beep in my brain. I'm like, that is not. And of course, we had the conversation, but it's fait accompli with these dogs. They're going to be trained, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help this dog owner. But there's certain things about how people live with their dogs that if they don't make those changes, no one can force them to make those changes. So I wanted to bring this out to people, dog owners everywhere, for your consideration so that you can take this and use it in a positive way with your own dogs and maybe even with your future dogs. Food for future dog thought. That's really powerful because now you go into it with a different point of view and you can do better right from the start. Okay? So this has been Conversations with a Dog Trainer. I'm Nick from Family Canine Dog Training, and I'll talk to you again real soon.